Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Reuters Institute Global Journalism Seminar Series. I'm Mira Selva, and I'm really delighted to have with us today Adela Navarro Bello, Director of the Tijuana-based weekly news publication Zeta, one of the only news outlets in Mexico that has been reporting from the country's northern states on organized crime, drug trafficking, and corruption for decades. I've spoken a lot about press freedom and journalism under pressure in the last few weeks, and there is no worse place in the world right now than Mexico to be a journalist. It's the country that has had the most journalists killed outside war zones. 9 journalists alone were killed in 2020, and about 120 have been killed since 2000. And according to the Committee to Protect Journalists, you are in fact more likely to be killed covering news in Mexico more than in a war zone. And no city in the world is in many ways more dangerous than Tijuana, where El Chapo Sinaloa cartel has been engaged in a deadly turf war with the Tijuana cartel since 1989. Journalism in Mexico being a journalist in Mexico involves taking your life into your own hands, but it also involves speaking to densely populated urban centers, to vast rural areas, to being a country on the edge of the biggest English-speaking country in the world. It comes with its own pressures and its own opportunities as well. And some of the most innovative and interesting journalism has also come out of Mexico, and I want to speak about that as well. But first of all, I want to welcome Adela to the series. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you to Reuters Institute and Oxford University for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adela. Do you want to start with your kind of presentation about your work, and then we'll go into questions and answers from there? Thank you.
Well, I dare to point out in Mexico, there has been an investigative journalist on drug trafficking issues before and after Jesus Blancornelas. Blancornelas was one of the 2 founding directors of Zeta Weekly news magazine in 1980. Originally, a publication dedicated to investigate government corruption, citizen complaints, question public policies. And in its earliest years, it was the target of censorship by all levels of government in my country, in Mexico. Zeta was consolidated in the border city of Tijuana, Mexico, neighboring with the city of San Diego, California, in the United States, a region that represents multiple opportunities for the development of binational business, cultural and social exchange, and it's also an attraction for drug trafficking cartels, which use this area of the country to transport drugs from Mexico into the United States. At the time, in the early 80s, Mexico was a drug transit country. Drugs were produced in Central and South America and transported through Mexico and distributed in the United States. The fleeting Mexican cartels were related to the Colombian mafia. For example, but the arrival of the drug trafficking to the northern border of Mexico, coming from the Pacific, generate the most feared drug cartels, which use violence to seize territories until they also start their own drug production in Mexico. I remember the first cover on drug trafficking published by Zeta dates back to September 1985. It was a story about how state police officers took care of a warehouse with a marijuana that belonged to the Arellano Felix cartel. Mr. Blancornelas, who was doing this investigation, began to investigate the phenomenon of drug trafficking and create a space to handle the issue with investigate journalists, with contacts with federal authorities, the military, and the investigating police forces. He gave names and surnames to the criminal structures and made the cartels visible in that time, from Sinaloa to Jalisco and to the Arellano Felix criminal organizations. The cartels then and now have expanded in total impunity. The authorities that should investigate them protect them instead by giving them information about police operations against them so they could escape on time or protect them during their escape. For example, only the Arellano Felix brothers confess years later they paid an average of $1 million a month in bribes to police officers, to investigators, to judges, and other public officials of the government in Mexico. In this sense, investigating information about the cartels was not, nor is it now, an easy endeavor for us journalists. Law enforcement authorities continue to deny the access to official information. In recent years, the personality of the President of Mexico has determined the degree of investigation that is carried out on drug trafficking and organized crime. A criminal phenomenon that in Mexico causes more than 30,000 intentional homicides a year. For example, while President Felipe Calderón started the drug war between 2006 and 2012, when the armed forces were unofficially authorized to prosecute drug traffickers, made us all witnesses operation to arrest the heads of the cartels. Mexico retired the army from this prosecution task during the next government, during Enrique Peña Nieto's administrations. The things changed radically between 2012 and 2018. And now we have a policy of hacks and not bullets, according to President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who has militarized public safety, but ruled out a policy to combat the cartels. In all these years, from the second half of the 80s until 2021, at Zeta, we haven't stopped investigation, drug trafficking, and organized crime. With the help of reliable sources of information within police corporations, the federal government, the military, lawyers, courts, we have managed to reveal the path of corruption and impunity that helps the cartels maintain their criminal power from the base and up. But during these years of investigative journalism on organized crime, we have paid the price for residing in one of the riskiest countries for journalists, Mexico. 3 of our colleagues have been murdered Another one survived an attack. And those of us who are currently in charge of Zeta have been the target of threats to our physical integrity on at least 4 occasions in the last 14 years. But let me start in 1988, when Hector Felix Miranda, founding director of the weekly Zeta newspaper, was shot 4 times. He was killed by the bodyguards of a man who, now deep in local politics, has been accused in the past from authorities from the United States of complicity with the Arellano Felix cartel and the Sinaloa cartel too. His name is Jorge Hank, who in fact the United States Immigration Department withdrew his tourist visa to prevent him from entering the country. But now he's in politics and he wants to be the governor of Baja. 2 of the murderers of Hector Felix Miranda served a sentence of more than 25 years in prison, but were released in 2015, 6 years ago, and they returned to work for Hank, the man who to this day has not been investigated as the intellectual author of a crime that occurred 33 years ago. And later, in 1997, Blancornelas made a series of publications about the role of the Arellano Felix brothers cartel in the murder of a priest, Cardinal Juan Jesus Posadas Ocampo, that happened in 1993 in Guadalajara, Jalisco. He was an important figure of the Catholic Church in Mexico, who was killed by a crossfire between the Sinaloa cartel and the Arellano Felix cartel in the airport. The journalist, Mr. Blancornelas, revealed how the mafia brothers fled with the complicity of the airport authorities after murdering the priest right after a shooting spree that left 6 other people dead. The director of Zeta had reliable information about what happened that day at the airport. Information that was provided by a relative of one of the criminals, in which he had confirmed with his contacts in the Attorney General's office in Mexico. And on November 27 of 1997, a group of 9 members of the Arellano Felix cartel ambushed Blancornelas. He survived. He was hospitalized for 3 months in one of those months in intensive care because he received 4 shots. But his escort and assistant, Luis Valero, was killed on the spot. From that moment until his death in 2006, Blancornelas was guarded by 14 members of the Mexican army who looked after him 24/7. None of the participants in the ambush has been tried for the crime against the journalist. Neither did the Arellano brothers as masterminds. The crime against the journalists remains until this day unpunished. In 2004, Francisco Javier Ortiz Franco, he was the general editor of Zeta, published in April of that year a report that had taken him months to build. He revealed the names and the images of the new members of the Arellano Felix cartel. Information that he gathered after investigating a poster of the FBI, which include dozens of people linked to the cartel. Francisco interviewed police officers, officials from the local attorney generals from Baja, and lawyers until he identified a considerable number of these, until that day, anonymous members of the cartel. He published in Zeta, and it was also established that they have all been photographed, all the photographs that were in the poster of the FBI. People wore the same clothes, the same tie, the same suit, because they took those photos to provide apocryphal identification that would accredit them as police officers, to impersonate them and maintain their impunity. On June 22 of 2004, Francisco, the editor of Zeta, was assassinated. The hitman, as it will be known later, was a member of the Arellano Felix cartel, and they killed him when he was leaving medical consultation and was accompanied by two of his minor children, who were left at the scene unarmed. Like the crime of Héctor Félix and Blancornelas, that of Ortiz Franco still remains unpunished. There is no justice for journalists killed in Mexico. The message is, you can kill a journalist in this country and you were not ended up in jail. When Cornelas retired as the head of Zeta in 2006, those of us left in charge of the newspaper made the decision to continue investigating drug trafficking and organized crime, but we took some measures to protect our editorial team and ourselves. One of them was that every report that revealed information about drug traffickers, provide their names and publish their photographs, their corrupt relationships, and their impunity, will be signed as Zeta investigations. A faceless reporter outside the newsroom. These and other steps to obtain information about drug trafficking, impunity, and corruption have worked out fine for us, such as not publishing related information that is not confirmed by 3 different sources. We also must have official documents and officials' interviews, photographs, official investigations, documents, expert opinions, among other tools to finally publish something about the drug trade. Between 2008 and 2017, we have received 4 threats, major threats. In 2008, we revealed with images and identifications the new generation of the Arellano Felix cartel. Criminal bought most of the copies of Zeta that week so that they will not be seen by the readers. We informed this to the authorities. We think they can do something to apprehend them, but they do nothing. And because massive bought of the newspaper is not a crime, investigation does not flourish. The following week, we republished the report in its substantial parts with the photographs and the names of the new members. In 2010, one of our investigations led us to discover a corrupt relationship between a group of the Arellano Felix cartel and the federal police, and also a major drug theft. a member of that cartel threatened to murder 3 members of the Zeta editorial board. He did so because no reporter was credited with the story. It was in Zeta investigation. So for the next 3 months, the editors, including myself, moved around with an escort of 7 members of the Mexican army who protect our lives until the shooters were arrested by the armed forces. The threat came in March. The shooters were arrested in May. The threats continue in 2014 and in 2017, when once again we had to be protected by bodyguards, in those cases from the state police from Baja. Today in Mexico, at least 19 criminal organizations commit crimes, which belong to 9 major drug cartels. The federal government, headed by President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, does not have a comprehensive strategy to combat drug trafficking. The intelligence apparatus that used to function in certain federal police task forces, teams, or the armed forces were gradually dismantled, as was the national intelligence and security system. We no longer have them. A list of main objectives to be arrested in the different criminal organizations no longer exist, or at least it has not yet been public. Similarly, many of the military checkpoints that were installed in the country, the different roads, particularly in the states bordering with the United States, in which drugs were constantly seized, have been removed. We don't know if the president of Mexico have a policy against the drug cartels. Whatever investigation is carried out on drug trafficking and organized crimes takes place in the states, where, due to their proximity, police corporations are usually in collusion with local criminals, hindering the administration of justice. We, as a Zeta's editorial team, continue to this day investigate this situation. Week by week, we publish the number of murders, acts of extreme violence, and disappearance of people as a parameter to measure the drug war in the state and in the country. And we still have reliable sources in some of the corporations, which still provide us information as we requested. Most importantly, our society, our readers, who help us remain committed to doing investigate journalists. They are our eyes, and we are their voice. Our pages remain as proof of a free, independent publishing space. Beyond the threats, beyond injustice, violent crime, corruption, and impunity, we continue doing our work, and we will keep reporting what governments aim to hide from the public eye, simply because the Mexican people have a right to know what is going on in your country. Thank you very much.
I mean, Adela, thank you so much for that incredibly searing account. And again, I'm so sorry for all your colleagues that you've lost under awful circumstances. Real sending our
Thank you.
condolences to you, and your courage is amazing. Can I ask you, when you were speaking, I was thinking two things. Firstly, what you're doing is extraordinary and unusual, but also in many ways, it's the absolute essence of journalism. You talk about being a newspaper of record, in this case, sadly, recording the homicides and the deaths, and being the voice of the community, where, and they are your eyes, which is a beautiful phrase. Could you talk a little bit about the relationship with your readers? How, how you're partly on circulation numbers and how you do there, and also how much do you feel that they trust you? If they don't go to you, where else would they get information from? Because actually Mexico is kind of incredibly rich, has a very rich newspaper landscape. There are a lot of print newspapers.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering if your relationship with your readers is different to that of many others.
We have a very deep relationship with our readers, with our society right here in this part of Mexico. They trust us because they don't have authority to trust. The federal government or the local government are corrupt. And when people know something, they call to Zeta to let us know about that. For example, like when the war on drugs was on in Mexico, they call us to say, you know what, one neighbor is having a party and there's a lot of cars and arms and they are drug traffickers. We are not police, we are journalists. So we gave that information to the most reliable police officers or general or military, the one that we trust. We gave that information. They go to that party and they arrest some people. And they only knew about this because some reader of Zeta or some part of citizen who trust us, tell us. So we have a very strong relationship. I insist, they are our eyes in the city. Obviously, we are one of the major newspapers from the northern part of Mexico. We have a very good circulation. Obviously, with the pandemic, everything goes down, especially the print issue of the newspapers or news magazines, because people were locked down and they're not able to go outside and buy a copy. But we continue to inform in our country through our website, ZetaTijuana.com. And we use that as our main media outlet in this difficult situation about the pandemic.
Thank you. And you also talked about the measures your newsroom has started implementing after the assassination to protect journalists. And one of them seems to be really about no bylines. It's kind of high, using the publication as the name, not the individual journalist. Could you talk a little bit more about the impact you feel as an editor it's had on your newsroom to work under these conditions? Because this must be also putting a huge strain on people's mental health, family life, general peace of mind.
Yeah, there were times where it was very difficult because of the killing of my co-workers. We have a newsroom crying and with a lot of pain of the loss of one of our editors, like, for example, Francisco in 2004. But we have in our newsroom very young people who is so brave. They are so brave to work in a newspaper like Zeta. We have reporters in their 20s or 30s, and they are very committed to investigative journalism. And we took other measures, like, for example, when a story of the drug trade is development, is not one person that is investigate that issue. Is a team We are a team, particularly in that story of the drug trade, of the drug cartels, and we protect each other. We do not maintain contact with the criminals. We do not accept when they ask for an interview, like the drug lords. They like the exposition of them, of their criminal ideas. We do not accept that. One of our policies, we are not going to give a space on our newspaper to interview a person who is at large of the justice, who is a criminal. That's very important, because we don't take part with anyone. Now the government, now the criminals. We investigate all the cartels, we investigate all the governments, because that's what we do. We do not take part of anything of this. And I think that it works as well.
That's really important. So you also don't end up being part of the game. You don't end up being played against one side against another.
Well, some of the journalists that have been killed in Mexico is because they interview one member of one cartel and not the member of the other cartel, or they only publish about specific crime organizations. Like the government do. The government only go against one specific cartel and protect the other. And then is when they got in trouble.
That's kind of impartiality. A lot of kind of members of these drug cartels have really not been hiding in the slightest, and especially on social media. Some have really kind of, deliberately boosted their profile on social media. And Emma Coronel Espiro, El Chapo's wife, I think was arrested last week after really boasting on Instagram about her very lavish lifestyle. I'd be really interested to know what you think about the platforms, a kind of Instagram, Facebook, allowing these kind of people to present their platforms, and also why do they do it? What's
well, actually, one of the objectives of Zeta, as we publish their photos and their names, is to make them go away. See, the people now can identify you, so you can now be free to walk in our streets or to be in a social media, because people know you're a criminal. That's one of the points of our publication, to combat impunity by exposing their names and their faces and their criminal acts. So I don't think, at least in this part of Mexico, the drug members of the drug cartels have that liberty, because of the job that some journalists are doing, like we in Zeta. They sometimes the authorities gave us information, we published this information, and the members of these drug cartels left the city, left the states. They go to another state, to another city, because they know in Tijuana, people can identify you, people want to point it out to the police to arrest you. That, I think, prevents to have them in the social media. I think the case of the wife of El Chapo is a very particular case, because he was a woman, and during the trial of the Chapo's trials, she became a celebrity. She was outside the court. She entered the court. She was all beauty. Like she used to be a queen of something, and I think that context give her the opportunity to be in social media. She was arrested because they are criminals. They are families of criminals, and the brothers, the sister. Her father is in jail. Her brother is in jail. All other members of her family are at large, and it was a matter of time. And it's not the first woman around El Chapo that is apprehended. She's the second one, and other one was killed a few years ago.
Thank you. I'm going to go to the questions which are in the Q&A box, and if you do have questions, please do type them in there. From Paddy Coulter, you talked about impunity in killing journalists, and there was an arrest last month of the former Pueblo governor on the charge of torturing Lydia Cacho, the journalist. And this, I know this was a case that's 15 years old, but do you think there's at least some progress in this, that there was some, some action from the authorities?
Well, the progress that has been made in these cases is because we journalists and some organizations who protect journalists are talking about that. We are published about that, and we demand our government to take action about. The Lydia's case was 15 years ago, exactly, and recently the governor of Puebla was apprehended, but it took too much work for civil organizations and for journalists, including obviously Lydia, to get to this point, to get to this moment. So in general, in the murders of journalists, there is a 99% of impunity. Only a few cases are resolved. From two cases, Javier Valdez in Sinaloa and Miroslava in Chihuahua, they have been some advance. They apprehend some of the material assassins, but they in Mexico the mastermind or the intellectual murderers were in impunity, in total impunity. So yes, there is a progress, but it costs a lot for us.
And the death rate amongst journalists is too fast for that much campaigning for each one. You talked about López Obrador and some of the kind of backward steps you felt that have happened in the kind of fight against the drug cartels. And a question from Marcela Gateres, which is, do you feel more or less protected as a journalist under his presidency compared to previous governments? Or no?
It's the same. Unfortunately, it's the same. This is our president for a third party. We was first we have the PRI, and then PAN, who has the right party, and now we have the supposedly left party in the government, like Morena from President López Obrador, and neither of them have give the Mexican, not forget the journalists, the Mexican, the security to do his life in harmony. It is very difficult because the president doesn't have a plan to go against the drug cartels. He doesn't believe in armed operations or investigations to go and apprehend the heads of the cartels. He believes that with his speech about being a good citizen and don't be a thief, don't be a liar, don't be corrupt, and everything is gonna be fine. And that's not, evidently that's not the way. We need investigation, official investigation. We need to have authorities who are seeking to eliminate this criminal organization and apprehend their leaders, and that we do not have right now.
I mean, you talked about Mexico, how Mexico grew as this kind of center of drug trafficking in the region. And a question from Ed Sullivan, do you think that the extensive decriminalization and legislation of drugs in the US, Mexico and elsewhere have had any, if they were decriminalized, would that have any kind of impact, positive impact on drug trafficking?
I think there's only a few drugs that are now legal, like marijuana in the United States. And the drug dealers or the drug lords, they always going to find another drug to traffic in. Now, for example, it's not a marijuana the big issue because it's legal in the United States. They continue to traffic in cocaine or now fentanyl or methamphetamine, other drugs. And they always going to find something to traffic or do another criminal activity like extortion or kidnap, something like that.
Okay. Thank you. And from Peter Adeli, one of my journalist fellows from Hungary, you mentioned the brave young reporters in your newsroom. Given how dangerous it is right now, how do you get smart, ambitious young people to go into this kind of journalism, given the risks involved? And do you find it hard to recruit the next generation of reporters at all?
Mm-hmm. Well, they came along. they go to Zeta because I think like it was my case. I was 21 years old when I finished my first semester of the university, and I thought this is the time where I start working and put in practice what I have been learning in the classroom. And when I do a analysis about all the newspapers that were in the 1990s in Baja to see where I can fit, I read Zeta and I said, this is the newspaper I want to work. This is a free and independent, investigative newspaper. That's where I want to be. So I asked Mr. Blancornelas for a job and he gave me the job that very same day. So if that now happens to me, young people, men, women, who are in the university or just finished their studies, approach to Zeta and ask for a job. And we do some interviews and we do a lot of filters to see who we are gonna hire, no? But I think they have, if you, first of all, to become a journalist, you have to be a specific person who seek for the truth, for justice, to contribute to a better society, and to be to work for Zeta demands apart some kind of bravery, no?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I'm always I love working with journalists because of their tendency to run towards danger rather than away from it. But yeah, absolutely. How do you measure impact of these stories? A question from Marco Lu in Kenya. How would you say your stories have led to policy changes in Mexico? And what do you expect change when you report on the cartels, or are you seeing yourselves more as kind of a paper of record that just has to document what's happening?
Yes, of course we expect change, and we are. I'm a positive person. I always thinking things were going to change at some point, and we think we contribute with our investigations to justice. I don't think there are new public policies from the reports that Zeta has published, but many of the stories that we publish ended up in an official document to seek for one person as a witness, no? in official documents at the court or the police, they have the stories about, we are published at Zeta as a part of the proofs that this person is a criminal.
Okay.
Contribute, I think we contribute to that. And the most important thing that we contribute is to end impunity, to tell the people, these are the criminals, these are their names, these are their photographs, and these are the corrupted officials or the government or the member of the government who is corrupt with this criminal. And I think that affects their freedom and their impunity, because other authorities or their government, or the federal government or the local government, has to now investigate it, because now it's public.
I mean, leads on to the next question, very nicely, from Adela Santelli in Brazil, which is, how has the public reacted to your work? You talked about them being your eyes and trusting you, but do you see, are there popular demonstrations demanding action against the drug dealers? When your colleagues were killed, did you see protests on the streets in support of your colleagues?
Yes, they are very supportive of us, very, very, very. We, in next April, we're going to be 41 years old. Zeta is going to be 41 years old. And I think we maintain us in circulation for 41 years old is because we have the solidarity and from our society, because they keep reading us. They keep buying our newsprint edition, and they keep looking into our website to know what is going on, what is happening. And in the difficult times that we receive a threat, or in the past when one of our co-workers was killed, we receive a lot of a solidarity demonstration from our society, demanding to the government to make something about it, to arrest the murderers or the assassins, or to give us protection for us to continue to do our work. They are very, very, very supportive. And we have to the organizations from around the world to protect and journalists. Mm-hmm. We call them our safety net. When we receive a threat, first of all, we publish about it. We said to our readers, Zeta is working under a threat right now. And this is the people who threaten us, or this is the cartel. And then we demand to our governments, local and federal, to do something about it. And we write to this organization like CIP, like CPJ, like Reporters Without Borders, Article 19, and others, and tell them about what is Zeta is working under a threat. And they make letters or public statements to demand protection from the journalists of Zeta, in this case, and demand the government to do something about. And I think that works too.
Kind of publicity, because that was kind of my next question, which was, what can the international community and journalists elsewhere do to help? Part of it is the raise awareness of the threats that you face, but is there kind of investigations that can be done, stories that can be written outside Mexico that would basically boost your coverage and help your work as well?
We receive a lot of help from other countries because they support the work that we are doing in Zeta, and they publish about our investigations and about what we are, how we are doing our work, like this talk. This talk make awareness of what is happening in Mexico, and in particular with Zeta, and that help us because we tell the government or the criminal, we are not alone. We are not alone. We have a lot of eyes and a lot of voices outside Baja in Mexico and outside this country and others in the world.
Thank you.
So thank you for that.
No, our pleasure is absolutely the least we can do on that. A question from Andrew Paxman. A big part of covering the cartels is investigating the politicians and the police who protect them. You mentioned this earlier on in your talk, but could you talk about a little bit more about that side of your work? How easy is it to do that, and do the same rules apply, reporting on the authorities as reporting on the cartels?
Yeah,
Dangerous.
Sometimes I say to people, we are between two fires, from the bullets from the cartels, the bullets and the threats, and the pressures from the government. We're caught between two fires. It is not easy at all to investigate corruption in government, because they too want to censor us, because we are telling the people that they are corrupt with proofs. For example, the actual government of Baja right now, he has spoke about us in a negative way in the last 9 months, like 16 times. He go against Zeta or myself. He tried to discredit the newspaper to maintain their corrupt government. So people don't trust us, but people trust us. But he want to people not trust us. But he is going to stay in the government just for 1 more year, and Zeta has been right here for the last 40 years. So people trust us better, no? But it's not easy to investigate corruption in the government, because they have the forces, the police forces, they have the judicial system, and they will use all their capacity to go against a journalist or a media to shut it down.
It's interesting that you say this is a kind of narrative that politicians have used all around the world to try and undermine public trust in the media, to stop the investigative reporting. And you're possibly the only editor I've encountered personally who said they tried, it failed. We have such a strong relationship with our readers that they can't get us. I'd like to stay on that, because I think this is really important. You've talked about the kind of relationship and the trust and the integrity with which your reporters work. How open are you about your ownership models, your funding? Like, do these questions come up? Because do you get, people must have questions about that. Like, how do you maintain this kind of absolutely high levels of trust?
Yes, we are very honest and transparent with our readers and with our society. We only have 2 income. The one from the sale of the newsprint edition, and for the advertising in those pages. That's the only 2 income that we have. We don't receive funding for anyone, and our government, our civil organization, from no one. We sell the advertising, and just the advertising. We don't sell a front page, a note, a photograph, nothing that from the editorial area. That editorial area is free, is independent, and we write and publish about what people say to us that is happening right now. And I think that is the principal point that for people to trust us. We are poor. We are a little newspaper, and it's not a big company. It's not a corporation, and we are very transparent about that. We receive advertisements from some governments, not from all of them. but we transparent those income too. This you buy a page to put an advertisement. You didn't buy the editorial line. You didn't buy a reporter or a photographer. You only buy one page. We make that clear all the time.
And how has that worked in the last year digitally? You said that last year you've gone, because all print fell. Has the revenues been the same on digital? Do you have membership models? How does that work? Do people subscribe? And also, do people come to you and your website directly, or do they find you via social media channels online?
But social media channels online, they go to our website, and we do not have a subscription for the moment. We are going to in some time, but not right now. And we are gonna try other models, like European models, to make our readers be our supporters too.
Yeah.
We can continue doing what we're doing, but not at this moment. We are going to that, and we are analyze those issues. Yeah.
So yes, it's really interesting, because that issue of trust, if you can take that to the digital space, it could be really lucrative. It can work there as well, especially if small organizations, small local organizations.
Yeah.
It's a question again about what can be done. So running out of time, and I want to kind of end on what can be practical done. Do you need more independent NGOs to help you protect journalists? Things like Periodistas de la Pi, journalists on foot. Are there? You talked about the fact that when you get threats, you speak to international NGOs. Is there anything else you need? Any other kind of support you need from organizations, journalistic organizations?
I think the tax they are doing to protect us and to demand justice for the journalist who has been killed or kidnapped or disappeared, I think that is a great job, and and that's it. To speak for us, to demand for us.
Thank you. And one final question before I let you go to your busy day. So much of your energy goes on covering drug cartels and organized crime, but what other stories would you like to be working on? What else would you like to be reporting on as well? Or would you like more time?
Actually, Zeta born as a free speech media, because in the 80s, the main issue was government corruption. And the majority of the newspaper, of the media of that moment were with the government, were official government, official media. No, Zeta was the only one who was covering this or investigate the corruption of the government, and we still do that. We try to make even the information that we publish. For example, we have 25 pages for the stories, for publish the stories. 4 of those pages are for insecurity, drug cartels, drug trafficking, and other pages are for government corruption, education, financial themes. Like, we are in the middle of a crisis in Mexico, economical crisis too. So we investigate that too very much. And we also have culture and arts and show business and sports. So we try to do investigative journalism in all of those subjects.
I think these areas are the ones where, if the drug cartels were somehow lessened in power, then it's a lot more dangerous for these other areas where you'd start.
Exactly.
It benefits a lot of people at the moment to have all this energy taken up with organized crime reporting, I think. Adela, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real honor to have you with us. And thank you for waking up so early as well in Mexico to be with us.
It's fine. No, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you all. And thank you all for your questions and for joining as well. And stay safe.
Bye.